Just to start, as Cynthia said, Eric, my very trusted assistant, co-partner in this work, has been spending most of the last 2 years looking at climate change projections. And we've been doing a top-down approach, which means we've been getting data and analysing data and producing maps. And I'll be showing you our workflow and some of the maps later. The point of this mountaintop and valley immersion was to start to develop the bottom-up story, to listen to people that are actually living in these landscapes and seeing whether what our models are predicting to happen and projecting to happen is actually happening. Okay? So to start off, I need to give a little bit of a background of what a climate change model is. So the data we're using is coming from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's World Climate Research Program. And they have a thing called the Coupled Model Intercomparison Project, where people, lots of acronyms, I'm not using the acronyms, okay? The modelers produce these Earth system models, which are mathematical representations of planet Earth. And in the model, this is a representation of the model, they divide the Earth up into grid cells, and they model the processes within these grid cells. And in the grid cells, they model atmospheric dynamics, the ocean circulations, the terrestrial surface and how that changes, the cryosphere, or whoever people that don't know, that's the frozen bits. They also have lithosphere processes, they have aerosols, anything that the science has got an idea on how it works, they incorporate it into these models. The models are massive, sort of a couple of million lines of code for anyone that's a coder. They also model the fluxes between these grid cells. So you model what's going on here and also how it changes. The models are developed and calibrated using our historic climate data. So the climate records from places like KK. Okay? And that's used to calibrate the model. And I should say that these models are heavily tested. Lots of people are doing research and looking at how well the models perform, predicting current temperature rises, changes in rainfall, etc. And then what they do is they project the model into the future. Because no one knows what the future holds, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has created a different scenarios. Okay? Part of the confusion comes through that the scenarios have changed on every one of their assessment reports. Okay? And the current ones are called these shared socio-economic pathways. Okay? This is a very complicated slide. What the shared socio-economic pathways are, it's a combination between a value called a relative forcing, which is an indication of how much greenhouse gases are in the atmosphere. So greenhouse gases, we're talking about carbon dioxide, methane, oxygen, etc. The more gases you have, the greater the amount of heat is retained. The greenhouse gases operate like a blanket, it keeps heat in. So the higher the number, the hotter it gets. Okay? The shared socio-economic pathways are just different ways that society might develop. And under the shared socio-economic pathways, they've got projections for population, energy use, how we're going to change society, etc. So SSP1 is a forever Sabah future. It's a renewable energy, just, equitable society. Okay? SSP5 is still a just, equitable society, but it's powered by fossil fuel. So it's burn, baby, burn. But everyone gets a bit of the pie. Okay? SSP3 is where China, America, other countries split off and they keep fighting each other and don't collaborate. And SSP2 is the middle of the road, which is what we're doing at the moment. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Okay? So we have the projections for these different SSPs. For today's presentation, and the only thing you need to remember is I'm only going to be presenting for 245, okay? Because this is the one that, according to the UN, United Nations environmental programs, climate gap analysis, emission gap analysis, this is the one we're on at the moment, predicting something like about a 2.9 degree rise in temperatures by the end of the century. The model has a 2.7, so it's slightly lower than what we're projecting to deliver. Okay? So what you will see today is a range of maps where we have a historic baseline and then the projected future towards the end of the century under this scenario. Okay? We have many other scenarios which we can present or not. So just to explain what Eric and I did, the modelling is not done by us. It's done by international renowned institutions. This is National Oceanographic Atmosphere Agency in America. This is the UK's one. We've got Japanese, we've got Germans, we've got French. There's something like 35 different Earth system models. There's some from China, from Taiwan, but we haven't used them all. They put all their data into this CMIP, coupled model into comparison project. So it's all open access data. So anyone can access it. But the data is not at a level that can be used to look at impacts in Sabah. It needs to be downscaled from those big grids, which are between 1 and 3 degrees, so 100 to 300 kilometre size grids, to something which can be used to look at impacts. And that's where these guys come in. WSL is the Swiss Central Institute for Snow and Ice, which is part of ETH, which is one of the top universities in the world. It's in the top 5. So you all should know NASA. Okay, so these organisations take the data from here and then downscale it, which just means breaking it up into finer squares. Okay, so instead of being at 300 kilometre resolution, this group brings it down to 1 kilometre resolution. This group brings it down to 25 kilometre resolution. We come in, and what we do is we crop to our focal area, which is Borneo at the moment, but we're going to expand if our plans go right. And then what we do is we develop code, R code, it's just a coding language, to do an analysis to calculate something called climate extreme indices and impact layers. And all of this is based on published research and methodologies. Okay? And the reason I'm stressing that is because when we present, or when Cynthia's presented the maps to certain people, there's been pushback.
They say we made it up.
We made it up. So all of the data underlying it is from top research institutions. The research is from published top quality journals. The only potential error is Eric and I making some mistakes in the R code, but we're getting that peer reviewed. And then we produce layers, just so you can visualize what we do. We take a global map. This is a global map of mean monthly maximum temperatures. We then snip out the focal area. It's actually for the whole of Borneo. We work with 3 different climatologies. A climatology is a 30-year period, because when you're working on climate change, you're not talking about yearly change, you're talking about climate changes over a long period, so you average it over a 30-year period. The baseline is this 1981 to 2010. We have mid-century projections and end-of-century projections. And what we do, this information is things like rainfall, relative humidity, maximum temperatures, minimum temperatures, mean temperatures. We then go to the research and create these climate extreme indices or impact layers. And this is just reanalyzing the basic data to create something which is a little bit more meaningful. An example is we use temperature records to calculate reduce in rice productions. Or in this case, we're calculating something called human heat. which I'll explain a little bit later, okay? So as I said, you'll be seeing maps like this. It will be for the middle of the road, 2.7 degrees of warming, all for the end of the century. This is a representation of the climate extreme indices. The climate extreme indices are produced from the NASA data, which is at the 25-kilometre resolution. So it doesn't make nice maps when you look at Sabah. It's very blocky. But what it's good for is these projections are daily changes. Okay? And it allows us to look at how things like the change in the length of the dry season. So what we did is we looked at the change of the length of the dry season for the baseline, 1981 to 2010, and then how it's going to change by the end of the century. So what it's saying, it's a 31% on average for Sabah. So the dry season is going to be really panjang. Okay, so it's going to be 30%. So if you live in an area like Suk, where we were told sometimes the dry season between 1 and 3 months, then you can expect an additional 1 week to 1 month on the length of the dry season. Where we've got quite a lot of these kind of climate extreme indices. I've only presented 3. This one is the change in the number of days with more than 20 millimetres. This is typically used as an indication of flooding. Okay, 20 millimetres starts to cause flooding in areas, and you can see also it's predicted to increase by 33%. The change in the heaviest 24-hour precipitation, so how much rain in one day, also increases. Although there's quite a bit of variation. Some areas, the heaviest rain will decrease, and others it will go up by 2/3. So both of these are indication of increased flooding. So the general trend for rainfall is our dry seasons will be hotter and drier, and our wet seasons will be hotter and wetter. Okay, so it will be more extreme climate. So climate extreme indices, but we also calculate these impact layers. The 3 that I'm going to show you are one called humid heat. And humid heat is the combined impact of temperature and relative humidity. If you go to Australia, you can go out in 40-degree temperatures and you can boleh tahan because your body sweats and your body cools down. If it got to 40 degrees in Sabah, you would not survive, okay? Because your body will sweat, you'll be sweating all over, but your body won't be cooling because the water won't evaporate. So the humid heat is a combined impact of, you can't see it, of temperature and a measure of relative humidity, and it's measured by something called a wet bulb globe temperature, which also takes into account this thing here, which is the direct heating from sunlight. Critical temperatures, wet bulb globe temperature is 35 degrees. A healthy person would only survive about 6 hours under these conditions. If you're old, got any illnesses, or a young child, then your survival time is a lot lower. These conditions also impact how long a person can work. So before you start dying, what happens is there will be impacts there when you're just going, it's too hot to go working. Okay? And that's something that you'll hear a little bit later. So what we did is we calculated a wet bulb globe temperature current, and we calculated it for people who are working outdoors. We then classified it into a threat level, and the threat level is the standard used by the US Defense Forces when they're planning their activities, their training. If it reaches these thresholds, they will modify the activity. So for just so you understand what a high threat means, if you're outdoors in those conditions, you're meant to be able to work for 20 minutes, and then you're meant to rest for 40 minutes. If you're under extreme conditions, it's 10 minutes work, 50 minutes rest. If it's critical, then you're meant to be not working at all. You're meant to balik rumah and reheating your air conditioned room. Okay? So this is current, and what you see is our lowland areas get into the high threat level.
But I think we should say that it's the 12 million.
Yeah, it's the hottest part of the day, and this is the hottest month. Okay, so it's not talking about 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay? Areas down here are nice and okay. This is what Sabah looks like under 2.7 degrees of warming at mid-century. You see large areas break into this extreme heat layer. Okay? So this is going to have massive impacts on people that are working outdoors, which tend to be farmers, most people in the big 40 groups, fishermen, road construction people, etc. Palm oil. As Cynthia said, we have lots of layers. We have layers for humans, we have layers for our agricultural systems, we have environmental layers. This is another layer that we created, which is this ratio between how much water comes in through rainfall and how much is being lost through evaporation and transpiration. And we express it as a ratio. If it's greater than 1, it means there's more water coming in than going out. If it's less than 1, it means the plant goes, this is what the plant looks like. At greater than 1, this is what the plant looks like when it's less than 1. Okay? And just think about it, the analogy is think about your bank account. Okay, if your salary is greater than your monthly expenses, you tend to be a happy person. If your salary is lower and your expenses are high, then it's an issue. Okay? So we calculated this indices, and then we worked out how many months of the year it gets into this condition. And what you can see is currently most of Sabah is dark blue, 0 months. And there are some areas, the central Sabah area, where you may get 3 to 4 months a year where your plants start to get into that. Okay. And Kuda, and also the Dek Peninsula. This is what it looks like at the end of the century with 2.7 degrees of warming. What you see is areas in central Sabah, you now start to get 12 months of the year where you're going to be under these conditions. The kampong that we visited falls into this area here, which is about 9 months of the year under water stress. So this is going to have major implications on their agriculture. You are going to have to work out how you do agriculture. We'll take a read. And then the final layer I want to show you is we've also done it for our natural environments. In Sabah, the greatest threat to our forests is fire. And so what we generated was a fire risk map. It's based on the NASA's Fire Information Research Monitoring System, so the satellites that go around and measure where a fire breaks out. And we have a range of environmental social factors underlying the model. And we classify areas as low risk to high risk. So most of the big forested areas are in the very low risk category. Some of the areas get into what you classify as moderate risk. End of century, you start to see Sabah, large parts of Sabah, shifting into an extreme high risk. What this will mean is that our forests are likely, without proper fire management, if we don't implement that, then our forests are likely to burn more frequently. And this will impact our wildlife, our ecosystem services, livelihoods, etc. So we have loads of layers like this. What we did for this ground truthing exercise is we split it up into 3 groups, and then we looked at which layers may be relevant to the different villages that we visited. Okay, so this was my site. I only took the heat stress layer that I showed you, that rainfall to evaporation, transpiration layer, a fire risk one, and I accidentally showed him the latex one. I was meant to be deleting that. I forgot to delete the slide, but it was there because the reason I was deleting is that they're not particularly impacted by this. Chipper and Eric presented to the community changes in rainfall, the heat stress layer. They also included the heat stress for chickens, how latex production will be impacted. Rubber, sorry. Sorry, yes. Latex is from rubber. And then how temperature will impact rice. Nev did the presentation in Pitaslao, and because it's a fishing community, he took mainly the ones related to oceans, so sea surface temperatures, sea level rise and storm surge, how this is going to impact the pelagics through to your mackerel and the big fast-swimming fish, how it's impacting the demersals, the grouper and your fish that live on the reefs, and then he also did the heat stress and your worms. So what we did is we had these, they selected these layers, and then we have a map which focused in on the area. And this is the Bornean timber. This is their concession. And what it's showing is the humid heat, again, but a little finer detail so you can actually see the area. And what if we know which camp holes we were going to, we could put those on as well. Okay? So this is their current situation. And this is what they were projected. So, in Bornean, we only presented this information to the management. We didn't have time to present it to the communities. In the other sites, what they did is they presented the series of slides showing the impacts to the actual communities, and that's something that we'll be talking about this summer. So that's it for me.
You're not showing the other two pages.
I didn't think we had time because there's.
But you have.
I don't have them all. We can show them if anyone's.
Okay, if any of you who, because I think all of us who went saw it, but those of you who didn't, if you're interested, you could over lunch and just ask.
Yeah, I would. If you want to look at it, I would actually talk to the person who gave the presentation, because what they did is they took the layers and then they made it their own presentation, so they have a better understanding of the main point. So people who don't know, that's Neville, and he did the business now, and Eric and Chipper are the ones that did the long